Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. Pete Carroll, Nick Saban, and now Bill Belichick, Tony, all in their 70s, all moving on.
Tony Kornheiser, are you trying to push me out?
Come on in. You're not too old. Nobody's too old.
Not on this show. Not people too young, not too old. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. We will get to the other news of the day in a bit, but we begin today with the end of Bill Belichick on the Patriots. The coach with the most Super Bowl wins and Super Bowl appearances is leaving New England, where they all happened. Belichick and Robert Kraft shared a stage today but took no questions together. Belichick praised everybody he worked with in New England and said he will always be a Patriot. Kraft called him the greatest coach of all time. Wilbon, your thoughts on how this ended and what Belichick meant to the Patriots and the NFL?
Tony, it really did seem to me sort of funereal. Just to me. This is how it struck me. And I realize that's not necessarily the case, and it seems like Bill Belichick's going to go on and coach somewhere else, and he still has quite the appetite for it. But watching Robert Kraft talk, and I was more interested in hearing Kraft talk. I mean, there's no point to hearing Belichick unless you're, in private with him. And I've had the luxury of having had that, the pleasure of having had that a few times in my life, where Bill Belichick's a real person and he's not standing in front of a microphone where it seems like somebody's killing him to be there. So I liked hearing Kraft more talk about his appreciation for Belichick and how he hired him and his impressions of him when he came after a less successful stint in Cleveland and what it was going to be like to go out and try to find somebody else coming up. And I was interested in hearing, and I'm going to beat you to go to the glasses, sort of, kind of. I was interested in hearing the former Belichick players like Teddy Bruschi, Damian Woody, Louis Riddick on our air. Just talk about what he meant to them, how he changed them, what he was like during a week of preparation, what he was like during game day. I was interested in hearing or reading, listening to Tom Brady's tweet when he thanked Belichick, and it was long and it was appreciative and it was even loving, if I can use that word. So I'm just soaking in the reaction from people close to Belichick. It's a larger universe than people might think, but it's not all that large. It's football people. And Belichick's a fascinating guy, and everybody goes at some point, and it didn't seem to have a lot of acrimony in it. And if that's the case, good.
Okay, I don't mean to cast any aspersions on Bill Belichick, because I don't think we're ever going to see somebody win 6 Super Bowls and go to 9 Super Bowls again.
No.
And I'm comfortable with the notion that he's the greatest NFL coach of all time, though I'm old enough to remember Vince Lombardi, and I might advocate for Vince Lombardi. But Belichick is absolutely great. I just think that I think some people are getting carried away with their valedictories. So there's 2 words that I think must be said here in context. And those 2 words are Tom Brady. Nothing happened without Tom Brady. Tom Brady left and won a Super Bowl on his own, and Bill Belichick spent the next 3 or 4 years pretty much treading water in the shallow end of the pool. And I would also say that it seemed to me that Bill Belichick got fired today. Not, it was politely done. But Bill Belichick the last 2 days was talking about, I coach the team, I get up, I go to work, this is what I do. Maybe he didn't mean it, but that's what I heard him say. And I think it's impossible not to believe that this is the outcome Robert Kraft wanted. And I'll say one other thing here. This is not a surprise, okay? Pete Carroll was a surprise. Nick Saban was a surprise. We've been talking about this for the last 2 years. The only surprise is that we can now put this date on it. That's all.
Yeah. And not looking for... These things have to come to an end. By the way, I would just say this about the Brady comparison. Phil Jackson had Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and Shaq and Scottie Pippen.
Yeah.
They all have great players.
That's 4 different people.
You're not winning without great players, so I don't hold that against Belichick.
I'm not holding it against them. I'm saying you got to mention it. It's not just him.
Do.
Like he's with Brady.
They do. Now that Belichick is leaving New England, the question becomes, where's he headed? Arthur Blank and the Falcons, they're being mentioned as one potential suitor. Atlanta is one of the 7 other franchises with head coaching openings. Tony, where do you expect Belichick to end up?
I really like this question because it states the obvious. The obvious is he's going to coach again. Robert Kraft said that today when he got up to speak, that he knows he is going to coach again. So if I'm Bill Belichick and I want to win in a hurry, the first place that I go to is the Chargers, because they've got a thoroughbred quarterback in Justin Herbert. And if I'm Bill Belichick, I spent the last 4 years without a quarterback, and all I did was lose. Atlanta, a lot of guys on TV today mentioned Atlanta. Atlanta doesn't have a quarterback. I understand why Atlanta's attractive, because they're in a bad division, right? And so maybe you can win that division quickly. Let's go to Alabama, which exploded yesterday with the news that Nick Saban was retiring. Saban and Alabama have been the gold standard in college football for the last 17 years. Wilbon, what and who do you see in Alabama's future?
Again, Tony, I don't know enough about it. I do keep up with college coaching and just was involved in a college search for my own alma mater. So I know the coaches who are out there. I don't know who's going to appeal to Alabama, and I don't know who you'd look at and say that he's going to be successful. I have no idea, even with that background, but I see struggle for Alabama, and here's why. Because they once had to replace somebody named Bear Bryant, okay?
That's
and
right.
when they did that, Tony, they went through coaches like Mike Shula. They went through Dennis Franchione, who, seriously, I thought Dennis Franchione was an actor on Hill Street Blues. I didn't even know he coached at Alabama, left for Texas A&M. Mike Dubose, who had a 4-7, a 7-5, a 10-3, and then a 3-8. I mean, Mike Price was there for a minute but didn't even coach. Ray Perkins was there, and Ray Perkins left to go to Tampa Bay. I mean, people left Alabama on their own quickly. Not like Coach Saban with a pocket full of trophies. So I see struggle, Tony. This is like replacing Coach Wooden, as we said yesterday. I see struggle for whoever comes next, no matter how terrific a coach he may be.
So I read some comments this morning by Nick Saban, who said he felt tired. He felt old. He felt a little bit tired.
Yeah,
he couldn't coach with the vigor and the verve that he wanted to. I don't see that, by the way, to mention somebody we talked about before with Bill Belichick. I do not see that. I think he's still got all of that stuff. I'm going to give you one name. It was put in my ear early this morning. I thought it was a great idea. One name, Urban Meyer. And I don't even like the guy. And don't tell me that Jacksonville disqualifies him, because this is a college job.
It does.
Just like the Miami Dolphins did not disqualify Saban from going to Alabama. Urban Meyer, who has kept up with the game because he's on TV all the time, Urban Meyer has won championships at 2 different colleges. You know who's done that in the last 90 years? One guy, Nick Saban. That's it. That's the list. I'm going to tell you this, Mike. If they hire Urban Meyer and not a previous assistant to Nick Saban, he'll win a national championship in 2 to 3 years, and he'll figure out the transfer portal in 15 minutes. And I just think you got to hire somebody quick, or every 5-star is going to decommit by the end of the week. Let's take a break.
Look, I think I'm old enough now where I can ask this question without being accused of ageism, but so I'm going to a certain area. If you were a young, promising player now, would you be fired up to play for Bill Belichick or Pete Carroll at this stages of their careers and lives?
Yeah, because I would want to know what they knew, because they've made a lot of players great. And the number one job of a coach, Mike, is to make the players better. And I always want to know that a coach can make me better, because if he can make me better, then I can go out in professional football and make a ton of money. I really don't care if it's old school or new school. The name of the game for me, because this is professional football, is how can I become a better player where I can make more money and feed my family, and I can drive nicer cars, and we can live in bigger houses. So, yeah, there is a wealth of knowledge in Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick and guys like Nick Saban, and I would love to tap into that. However, I do understand that this younger generation is different. They don't want to be pushed quite as hard as some of those old school coaches will push you. So I can kind of see both ways, but old Boog, I want all that knowledge, Mike.
And you don't think it's passed them by in any shape or form, it sounds like?
No, I honestly don't think it's passed them by, because I think winning, to me, breeds success, and success leaves clues. And they've kind of morphed and changed along the way, but there's still some old school values to their coaching.
I want to ask you about LSU specifically, because obviously you played there just before Nick Saban arrived and won his first title. Booger, as well as you know Coach Saban and what he did in the SEC specifically, is it possible that he was so good he changed the actual sport? Did he have that kind of impact?
Well, what he changed is the ability to recruit. You know, we talk a lot about college football and what made Nick Saban great. 2 words: process and recruiting. His ability to go out and get the best players to come to Alabama was always outstanding. That's number 1. Number 2, his ability to make you focus and make you stay in the process. He wasn't worried about the outcome, Mike. Think about that. Too many times in life, we focus on the end and not the journey. We focus on the outcome and not the process. I never played for Coach Saban, but everybody that played for him said the one word he always used was process. Not the journey, the process to get where you're trying to go. And that had to be one hell of a ride because he's the greatest college football coach of all time.
All right, we'll get you out of here on this. And it's also a question about Alabama now that Saban is leaving. Dan Lanning announced in a video that he's going to stay at Oregon. I don't know that he was offered the Alabama job, but he's out. Where do you think Alabama goes from here?
That's a great question, Tony. I'm going to give you 2 names. Number 1 is going to be Mike Norvell, the coach at Florida State. From what I understand, there are some direct ties between the AD, Greg Byrne, at Alabama, and Mike Norvell, the head coach. To me, it's got to be a guy at the top of the level of a Power 5 program that's been there and done that, and he's done it in this climate, which is a new climate. You got NIL, you got the transfer portal. So Mike Norvell will be number 1. The second one would be Kalen DeBoer, because when you talk to everybody from a coaching and a teaching standpoint, no one, and I mean no one right now, is doing it better than Kalen DeBoer. So if you gave me those 2, if you gave me Mike Norvell and Kalen DeBoer, I'd take that Tony Kornheiser money and that Michael Wilbon money, and I'd go to ESPN Bet, and I would bet it all on those 2.
Yeah, that's
get
great.
to the bet
You
portal.
talked about
That's the portal we
bigger
gotta
cars
get to.
and bigger houses. That's Wilbon's life.
Oh,
Bigger
please.
cars, more houses, bigger
Please.
houses. Thank you, Booger.